Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning, everyone. We've had some good questions in the chat. I'm going to go back a little bit because I think it's worth emphasizing. We had one question about the financials, specifically the process of downloading the worksheet, et cetera. Elizabeth, you want to address that?
Yes. So I think that question came from Nicole, and you're absolutely correct. Your understanding is there's an Excel spreadsheet attached to your application. You are asked to download that, fill it out with up to 5 years of your financial data, and then upload that back to Foundit, and also use that as a reference to input that information into the application itself.
Thank you. And then while you're talking about the finances, we had a question about the funds being reimbursed after the initial 10,000. Would you like to address that or pass it to Carol?
Carol, can you see Alexandra's question in the chat? I think it would be a great one for you to address.
Sure. So the 10,000 comes immediately after grant award night. So it's kind of a no strings attached. Here you go ahead and get started, and no paperwork is required for that.
And then I think there was an additional part of the question after the initial $10,000. When we use the term reimbursement, I think Alexandra asked, does their organization need to pay out the expenses first and then submit a report or invoice for reimbursement, or does the report or invoice needed only to request the funds as needed?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Great question. You can submit an invoice so that you don't have to worry about the cash flow, which I know is an issue for a lot of organizations. So if you have, it does have to be an official invoice, but if you have that, you can submit that for payment before the funds are actually drawn down from your bank account.
Thank you. Very good. So we've got a question about counties that are not in the San Antonio area, for example, Devine, Texas, Medina County, et cetera. Jenny, do you want to address our boundary question?
Sure. So those counties that are listed there that's our service area. So we do require that substantial operations be in our service area. So if it were in another county, those do not qualify.
Great, and those are all listed on our website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then Nicole had a question about previewing the questionnaire and where that's located. That is all on our website, our new website. We're proud of that. I don't know if we want to share the screen, or just walk them through. Elizabeth, can you do that?
Sure. And just while I'm pulling that up, specifically, I know we direct you to many of our resources, which are on the How to Apply page. But let me get back here to Zoom and go here. But this is actually on, if you're on our website and you go to the nonprofits tab, it's actually the first drop down, which is your grant process and eligibility. And if you scan down here, we have a new visual of the grant process. So we have previews in two places. The organizational questionnaire in step 1 is, you'll click on this link right here. And then also there's the preview of the project application under step 2, and you'll click there as well.
And so while we're on that page, can you go back?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
There we go.
So if you go back just up above that, that's where our applicant criteria, applicant disqualifications, project criteria, and project disqualifications are. So those tabs give you all the information about what kind of project qualifies, what what all of those things are. So this is a great section to go through and review before you start.
Thank you.
Great question. Thanks.
We had a question from Jasmine about the 2-year period for project. And the question is, would this be for project implementation or for the project to be completely finished? Carol, you want to address that?
Yes, so this would be for the project to be completed. That said, I mean, thinking back to the last couple of years, and there are a lot of delays, of course, due to COVID, especially for our construction projects. And so we'll work with agencies as things come up that are unforeseen. But when you apply, the intention is that this is a project that will be completed within the 2 years.
Thank you. And then we have a couple of questions. Finally, we have a couple of questions about specific projects. One question is just asking us to talk about choosing a focus area, and how the project may touch multiple focus areas. And if they have a project that does touch multiple focus areas, how do they consider a focus that's primary? That's actually a really good question. Elizabeth, you want to talk about that, or Jenny?
I think Anne's probably the best person to talk about that, since she's with the grant review team.
Let me hop in. No, go ahead.
I can address that too. Focus area is a big decision. And if you touch multiple focus areas, my suggestion really is that you focus a lot on not just the project itself fitting in the focus area, but make sure that you can get your outcomes, that your outcomes really are the same as that focus area as well. Sometimes we've had projects that fit in one focus area and they put it in a focus area, but all of the outcomes are related to a different focus area. And that's when it'll get a little iffy for our grant reviewers, and you might not go further in the process because all of your outcomes are for a completely different focus area. So keep that in mind when you pick a focus area. And a lot of it is just where's the bulk of it? Where's the bulk of your project going to fit the best? And again, keep in mind your outcomes and where your outcomes fit as well.
Thanks, Yvonne. Appreciate it. So we have a question about providing a couple of examples of projects, programs that we prioritize and typically fund. I'm going to, I think, refer that, Adriana, refer you to our website. There are a number of examples of programs and different things, and including the funding process. So we had another question about speaking with someone if they're struggling, and we encourage you again to reach out to either the grant info at impactsanantonio.org. Jenny and I both monitor that. If you have specific financial questions, encourage you to reach out to Shirley, Elizabeth, or maybe you can bring up those emails one more time. And then,
hey, Tony, I'm sorry, real quickly on the question about the projects that we typically fund. I'm going to bring up the website again real quickly, if that's okay, and just point folks to where that is. So if you go to our website under About and History, I think this is where it is, right, guys?
No, if you go back up,
sorry.
It's actually under Our Impact or CR.
Oh, sorry, CR Impact. Thank you. See, it's a new website and I haven't passed the test yet. So under CR Impact, and then to Tony's point, what you'll see is across the years, you'll be able to go in and look at all of the different projects that were awarded. And that gives you probably, I think, the best perspective on the kinds of projects that we typically fund. I would focus on more recent years because that would probably be more relevant. You know, the reality is, and this goes back to Yvonne's point about, focus areas, your project needs to stand on its own in terms of being very compelling, both in terms of the hearts and minds of the grant reviewers who are reviewing the applications in that particular focus area. And so, the pool of projects we get is every year is different. And it's, up to those grant review teams to narrow those down to finalists. So the most important thing is that it's really compelling and the impacts and outcomes you're achieving are compelling in that focus area so that it competes really well.
While you're talking, there's a question about defining how we benefiting a smaller population in a major way. Could you keep talking about that a little bit?
Oh, sure. And this one comes up a lot, and there's no black and white answer to this. But I think, kind of when I think about this, and there are certain projects that will provide an impact to large numbers of individuals. And there are others that, while the sheer number of people, if you were just to look at that, directly affected may not be large. So maybe it's, it's a few families, but the impact that project is making on, a core family unit, and the depth of the impact both on that family and then the cascading impacts, kind of like the drop in the water and it spreads, can be very profound and very long lasting. So we're just trying to help articulate to folks that there is a range and there's no black and white measurement of the number of individuals impacted.
Thank you. Okay. So one question was, is there just one large award for each of the 5 focus areas and then smaller support grants? Jenny, you want to talk a little bit about that? Jenny or Yvonne?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. So yes, there is just $100,000 grant in each focus area, and that's assuming that we raise at least $500,000, which we're very confident that we will be able to do. And then there are smaller support grants for the other finalists. So in each focus area, there's 2 finalists. One will get the large grant and one will get the smaller support grant. And that's really dependent on how much money we raise. They were, I believe, $11,000 was the support grant last year. And that is an unrestricted grant. And frankly, some of our agencies have done an unbelievable amount of work with that smaller amount of money and had some great results with that as well.
Thank you. There's a question about if a project needs to be completed in 2 years, are you less inclined to fund existing projects? The one for which we would like to submit is an ongoing program. Jenny, you want to keep talking about this one?
Sure. So we have 3 categories of projects: a new service, and an expansion of an existing program, or capital. So you have to fit it into one of those 3. If it's just ongoing operations, we don't fund those. We did during COVID, but we no longer fund ongoing operational. If it's construction, you really need to carve out a piece of work that's $100,000 that's new. We don't fund $100,000 towards a larger existing project that's ongoing. What you're really trying to do is find something that you can carve out that has, again, as Yvonne said, outcomes specific to that will be compelling to our grant reviewers. So hopefully that helps.
It does. Thank you. We had a question about what determines a large population: 100 people, 1,000, 6 figures. Jenny, keep going.
Sure. So in the grant application, you will list the number of people that are impacted by the project, but you're not going to be asked to say, is it small or large? That's really, the grant reviewers will look at the number of people impacted and then the impact, and then they're not going to put you in one or the other category. They're just going to ask that question again: is this a large population that's impacted, or is it a small population that's impacted in a really significant way? And either one is fine.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I think one last question that's really good. This is comes from someone who obviously applied before, but then they were told that they did not meet the requirements to apply, so they didn't actually finish the application process. But we could not figure out which requirements we didn't meet. And I wrote back to ask for clarification, but we were not able to get a response. Could you help us figure that out? Jenny, can you speak to that as well?
Sure. So we would love, so we have about 170 applications that will come in every year. and we are a volunteer-led organization, and we would love to sit down with all 170 organizations and give feedback. But that's just not possible because of the time commitment that would make. So unfortunately, we don't give specific feedback to any agencies throughout the process. We can refer you back to the qualifications on the website, but that's all we're able to do given our volunteer status.
Great. We've had one more question roll in. If we have a new project, say that costs approximately $300,000 and only have a $200,000 budget, would that not be a project that you might fund? Jenny?
So I'm not exactly sure of the specifics of the question, but we do have people that apply for, and it's a larger project. Maybe we've had up to $5 million capital projects. And typically what the agency will do is they will carve out a piece of that larger project and say, this is the Impact San Antonio piece. And then here's the larger project above that. The key to that is having really clear about where the rest of that funding is going to come from, and either having raised it or having really clear ways that you're going to be able to raise that additional funds so you can do the whole project. So I'll give you an example of one application. It's a large capital project. They were redoing a bunch of buildings, and what they decided was they applied for Impact San Antonio to do the child care piece of that. And so it was our piece of a larger project, and we've done multiple ones of those in the past. Hope that helps.
It does. Thank you very much. So we had one more question roll in. Elizabeth, I'm going to pass this one to you. Do certain categories get a lot more applications than others? Which ones have the highest number of applicants? Sorry, it moved. Hoping to weigh our chances a little.
So it's a great question. I mean, just if you look at the distribution of kind of the missions of nonprofits across the country and our area, there are certainly some areas that are more densely populated, if you will. So health and wellness, education, family tend to have more. We'll tell you that those numbers vary each year. And the one caution that we have is, it goes back to, again, what Yvonne was talking about. You need to make sure that that project and the outcomes that you are proposing align with the focus area you're applying with. If it's, across multiple focus areas, and, then there may be a couple that you would align with. Just be careful. Don't try to assume that, hey, this focus area might have less applications, so we're going to apply in that area, because if your project and outcomes don't align well with that focus area, the grant review team, that's part of what they're assessing. There was another question, Tony, and I'm sorry if I was just out of it, and I'm not sure we answered Joy Green's question about, is there just one large award for each of the 5 focus areas and then smaller support grants? I'm sorry. I guess I'm just losing my brain, which would not be the first time.
Yeah, and Joy responded, yes, thank you. So one last question from Andrew. If we have a project or program that is A, impactful, B, could benefit tremendously from funding, C, has a clearly defined end date, as in the project sustainability prospects are limited, then does that reduce our chance of securing an award from Impact San Antonio? Elizabeth, can you address this, please?
Yeah, so what we ask our grant reviewers to do, and Yvonne, we want to chime in on this, is to evaluate the project on its own merits. So if your $100,000 project request is associated with, X outcomes, we ask that review team to evaluate those results, specifically directly correlated to that investment of $100,000. We're not evaluating the long-term sustainability of an initiative. We really aren't in any position to do that. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Andrew, I hope that that does. Yes, he says that it does.
Thank you.
And then finally, she says, what percentage of grant applications do you fund?
So let me take this one. So really depends on what year you're talking about. And we've been very, very blessed in the past several years to have exceeded our goal of being able to get at least 500 memberships and be able to consistently award a $100,000 grant in each of the 5 focus areas. So which means 5 high impact grants and then 5 smaller support grants for each of those years. Over the past years, if you kind of especially start with 2020 with COVID, we've seen as many as 170 applicants start the process. So I would say right now we run between 140, 150. And then, you narrow that all the way down to the end of the process and we get down to 5 grants.
Great. So folks,
So
go
I just
ahead.
want another comment. So there's the funding, but there's also a huge benefit for agencies to be in the grant review process. And you get a lot of people that learn more about your organization. And if you get a site visit, you have people who are very active and involved in the community that get an opportunity to come and learn more. So there's benefit to the process, even outside being awarded a grant.
Thank you. So Gabriella asked, she said the preview of the questionnaire doesn't seem to be appearing when I log into the grant application. The preview of the questionnaire is on the Impact San Antonio website. It's not in the grant application platform found it. So it's on the Impact San Antonio website.
And because the submission window is not open yet, they won't yet see it in their found it, correct, Jenny?
Yes, that's correct.
So Sarah asks, can we send a question for clarification or not? The slide indicates we can, but the comment from Jennifer was no further information will be provided.
So if you've got a question during the process, go ahead and send it in, and we will answer it. If it's why didn't I move to the next step, we're going to send you back to the website and the overall general information.
I think that's it for questions. Again, we had tech support put up our emails, and our contact information is also on the website if you have additional questions. The application will be opening very soon. And I think that's it for our Q&A portion. Elizabeth, I'll pass it back to you.
Find my mute button. Thank you all so much for your engaged participation. Just one reminder before we go, Jen is going to have the slides and the audio recording of today's session posted on our website no later than Monday the 10th. And again, thank you so much, and we wish you all the very best of luck in this year's process.